welcome to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast. And you know what day it is. Today is draft day. One of my favorite days of the year, personally. As you can see in the background, that way. In the background, Cleveland Browns fan. So, the NFL draft is basically my Super Bowl. I love the draft. So, most of our show is going to be focused on the draft today. Also going to talk a little bit about the House settlement being delayed, what Judge Claudia Wilken kind of commented on about that. Then we're going to talk, like I said, bunch of draft stuff. Going to do top 5 wide receiver prospects in this year's draft class. Also just going to talk about some of the rumors that have been flying around today. Obviously on draft day, you start hearing a bunch of stuff. We're going to go over some of it, what some people have been saying, some predictions. We're also going to talk a little bit about some veterans who could be on the trade block, could be traded today on draft day. And then we're going to end our show by previewing some guys still in college that could be potential first-round picks in 2026. But before we get into any of all that, I just want to remind everyone that we love hearing from you during the show, whether it's a quick comment, thoughtful question, or just an opinion and insight that you have to share, you have to get out. We love to hear it. One easy way to ensure that your comment gets on the air, gets read, is to use the Super Chat feature. Do that. You can click the $sign at the bottom of the chat box and send in your comment, question, insight there. This is a great way to ensure that your comment gets on the air. It's also just a great way to support our channel, support what we're doing here at GSMC. We couldn't do what we do without you as a part of our community. We're so grateful to have you here. And if Super Chat is not your thing, you can also go to gsmcsport.net to tip, donate, leave a comment or question there. Again, we're so grateful for all y'all, and we couldn't do what we do without you. But let's talk a little bit about the House settlement. This is obviously going to be one of the big storylines throughout college football, college athletics for the long-term future, short-term future. Judge Claudia Wilken, though, she decided to delay the approval of the House settlement, basically mainly over concerns over roster limit implementations, as well as some kind of issues with NIL stuff. But I want to go over kind of the settlement terms first, what's potentially on the line here that could be lost. I kind of doubt it. It seems like this is going to get passed, but this is one last hurdle for the NCAA to kind of jump through. But so if all of this goes through, there's a $20.5 million salary cap for revenue sharing at each Division I school starting July 1st of this year. 2025. There's also going to be $2.77 billion approximately in back payments to as many as almost 400,000 former student athletes who played an NCAA sport between 2016 and 2024. Those are going to be kind of the years, the cutoff years. Then also outside NIL deals of more than $600 of worth. Those are going to have to be vetted by a third-party clearinghouse. They're kind of still all setting that up. I'm really curious to see how that's going to work. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be kind of like an overarching organization that has authority, but they're not the NCAA. We'll see how that kind of all shakes out. But then NIL deals are also going to have to meet fair market value, which, again, my question here is, what exactly is fair market value? That's kind of going to be a big debate. It still is right now, is how do you determine that? I've talked about it before in some of my segments. How exactly are you going to determine fair market value, especially when you're considering athletes that are in very different markets? That's going to be something that's kind of interesting, I think. But another thing here, with the roster limits, there's going to be unlimited scholarships. So there won't be scholarship caps. Previously, like football had 85 scholarship spots, and then you could have basically as many walk-ons as you wanted. Now, that's not going to be the case. It's going to be a 105-man roster limit. but you can give all those players scholarships, but you can't have more than that 105-man roster. There's been around 90,000 of these almost 390,000 former athletes have already filed back pay claims. That number is probably going to reach around 120,000 pretty soon. And only 43 athletes opted out of the settlement. 73 objected to the terms. I thought that was pretty incredible considering how many athletes have been affected by this, how many are eligible for it, I guess. And then how the revenue sharing is also going to kind of work is going to be interesting. Each school's revenue sharing formula, it's going to be capped at $20.5 million, like I said, but the pool is going to increase 4% each year during that 10-year contract. So it's going to keep going up, kind of like a salary cap in professional sports. And then the back payments are going to be set in motion with Judge Wilkins' approval. The back payments are also kind of interesting. NCAA is going to foot 40% of that settlement. And then the rest, the remaining 60%, that's going to come from reducing revenue distributions to the conferences. And they're kind of breaking it down by power conference rankings. The Power 5, they're going to pay 24% of that 60%. Group of 10, they're going to pay about 10%. The FCS as a whole is going to pay like 14%. And then non-football conferences, so every other athletic conference basically that just does not include football in Division I, they're going to pay like 12% of that back pay. I think that's going to be kind of interesting how that's going to kind of shake out, what they're going to do with that kind of revenue sharing and that back pay for the former athletes. I think it's going to be something that's going to be kind of wonky to figure out, but we'll see. Wilkins' main concern with the settlement right now is the roster limits. So if these limits did go into effect as soon as the House settlement would be approved, this would leave nearly 5,000 current student athletes without spots on rosters across the 40-some NCAA-sanctioned sports. The caps would put a lot of these teams, players, their preferred walk-ons, get people that have roster spots but not necessarily have a scholarship. They're going to be cut, basically. They're not going to have spots on rosters. This has already been happening. I know someone from Washington State that was on the swimming team as a preferred walk-on. They were already told that they did not have a roster spot for the next season. Just a couple different athletes across sports, this has been happening, and these athletes are kind of in limbo. It's really putting them in a tough spot, especially if they're informed this like after the portal closes or just at a bad timing. It really puts them at a disadvantage. So that was kind of her big thing. She said that it wasn't fair, it wasn't just. The very athletes that this settlement's supposed to help would actually be hurt by these roster limits, at least in the short term, because there could be thousands of current student athletes who in theory are supposed to be helped by the settlement. They're not going to be student athletes anymore, at least at the school that they were originally at. Her big thing was the absence of a grandfather clause. That's kind of where she's been pushing this, is to have the introduction of some kind of grandfather clause that allows current student athletes to still maintain their roster spots throughout their eligibility. Most likely kind of could be determined on how that grandfather clause would actually work, but it sounds like she really wants the integration of some kind of clause, some kind of transition plan to make this a more smooth transition to roster limits. There's also concerns about, with the roster sizes, roster caps, as their Title IX implications, if cuts disproportionately affect either men's or women's sports, how is that going to affect Title IX regulation? I think that's going to be kind of an interesting question here too. And then another thing I thought of is a lot of times you see, the NCAA getting sued for revenue for some kind of student athlete being paid type of theme. If the settlement does go through, I think we're going to see a lot more of individuals suing individual institutions. So you're not going to see an athlete sue the NCAA anymore. You might see them sue the actual school that they attend. If you think about, you have an athlete, say you have a football player at a school such as Ohio State, and then you have a football player at a school like Rutgers, but the kid from Rutgers is, a better athlete, but is not getting as much of a percentage of revenue as, the player from Ohio State. Could the Rutgers player in this theoretical scenario, could he go and sue Rutgers University for not giving him the same percentage that athletes get at other schools? That could be kind of something that we see if it's going to depend on how the schools kind of cut up their revenue. I think it'll be interesting to see. We're not really going to have, each school is not going to be the same in terms of how they're going to split up this revenue distribution. And I think that's going to be the cause for some potential lawsuits, some potential issues down the line for some of these schools. And the big thing here, again, is Wilkin wants a grandfather clause. She wants to allow these current athletes to not be cut abruptly, not immediately lose roster spots. It would also give schools time to kind of adjust their recruitment, their roster management styles, strategies, and just give time for compliance, for clarity as well. I think it makes a lot of sense. And the attorneys have 2 weeks, I believe, is the deadline. They have a hard deadline for 2 weeks, and they're going to have to come back, discuss this again in front of Judge Wilkin, and we're going to find out. But I think this is trending towards being passing. The big thing here is the roster caps, which was always my concern too. Will we see that kind of be grandfathered in rather than implemented right away? So we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, going to talk a little draft, going to talk some wide receiver prospects, and give my rankings of the top 5 guys in this year's draft class. But we will be back shortly on the GSMC College Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast. Big day today. It's draft day. One of my favorite days of the season, of the year, honestly. But just talked a little bit about the House settlement being delayed. We're going to talk a little bit about wide receiver prospects, guys that I think are the top guys in the class. Right now, my number 1, I have Tet McMillan. I think this kid's absolute stud out of Arizona. Had 2 great back-to-back seasons, 2023, 90 catches, 1,400 yards, averaged 15.5 yards per reception, had 10 touchdowns that season, and then followed it up again this year, had 84 catches, 1,300 yards. 8 touchdowns, had a long of 78 this season. 6'5", 210, big-bodied wide receiver, really strong hands. Obviously, he has the frame to make him stand out. Beats man coverage really well. A big guy that wins 50-50 deep balls. He's a guy that's going to make tough catches over the middle of the field. Really good releasing at the line of scrimmage. Able to snap out of routes pretty easily. Really strong route runner. And then just finding windows, works back to the ball really well. I think this is going to be a guy that's going to produce at the next level. I think he has the most talent in this class. I'm really curious to see where he actually kind of ends up. I see his range probably in the 7 to 18 kind of range. I think the Saints, I think the Cowboys, I think the Cardinals, Seahawks could all kind of be in play here. We'll see, though. I think he's my main guy right now. My number 2 receiver is Luther Burden, Missouri. I know he's not. A lot of guys, he's not that highly rated across a lot of people's boards. This is a kid that I think is legit. I really think he kind of got downgraded based off of 2024 this past season. Didn't have a strong performance. Only had about 650 receiving yards. Really kind of did not have a great year. Missouri just overall had an up and down season. But 2023, guy that had 85 catches, 1,200 yards. And he's only 6 foot, 205. But this is a dude that's a smooth player, route runner. Also has gotten 34 carries across his career. Last season had 9 carries, had 120 rushing yards, which I thought was kind of interesting. I didn't realize that until I went back and kind of looked at the numbers. This is a guy that's great in open field after the catch, can turn it up, just instinctive as a runner in open space, able to find and move throughout the defense really well. This is a guy that's going to be a killer against zone coverage, just in terms of his route running, in terms of he's really able to kind of change speeds, throttle up, throttle down, really change directions, change speeds well, and guy that's got strong hands, doesn't really drop passes. I think he's got a really high ceiling if he's in the right offense, if he's in the right position. I'm really looking at him right now as an early day 2 pick, maybe mid round 2, but I love Luther Burden. I think he's getting a little underrated just nationally right now, really based off 2024. But if you turn the tape back to the season before, this is a guy that I think is legit. My third guy, I have Emeka Egbuka, Ohio State. Now, kind of sound like a homer, but I think this is a guy that's going to be a great slot receiver from day one in the NFL. Led the team in receptions this past season, had 81, had 1,000 receiving yards, also 10 touchdowns. Also joined Marvin Harrison as the only Ohio State Buckeyes ever to have 2 1,000-yard receiving seasons, which is kind of interesting. You think of some of the guys that have come through there in the past 5-10 years especially, and then historically too. They've had some really great wideouts. Him and Marvin Harrison, only 2 guys to have 2 1,000-yard receiving seasons. Also finished on a high note, 6 catches against Notre Dame in the national championship. OSU's all-time record holder for receptions, 205 receptions in his career, second all-time at Ohio State in terms of career receiving yards. And then another stat that I really liked was Emeka Egbuka caught 1 pass in his final 40 games played, at least 1 in every single game for 40 straight games. That's 3 seasons of having a pass catch in every game he's played. I think that's really incredible. Just shows the consistency, the ability to be a safe target for a quarterback. This is going to be a zone coverage destroyer. He's really smart, just running routes. Egbuka settles well into his windows. He squares up his body, gives his quarterback a really nice target, really good spot to throw to, able to kind of flatten out of his routes when he's breaking and kind of separate from defenders, keep him on his hip, he can still make the catch. And this is a guy that catches the ball in stride. He is never kind of out of position. When he's in the slot, gets a slant, catches it, he can turn upfield really quickly, turn on the jets. Not going to blow you away with his athleticism or downfield speed, but a guy that can turn it up in the right position. Really good acceleration, kind of cutting upfield. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the best pro out of the group, at least right away. I think just kind of his skill set is really conducive towards an early role in the NFL. This guy should be... I'd be curious if he actually gets picked tonight. I think there's a couple teams in the 20s that could maybe take a chance on Egbuka, but if not, I think he's an early day 2 pick. I think then Matthew Golden, I really kind of like Matthew Golden. I just like a couple other receivers a little bit better. Matthew Golden's my 4th receiver. He really kind of blew up this past year after his 2024 performance. Kind of took over that number 1 role at Texas, showed out. This is a guy that's really explosive off the line of scrimmage, gets out of breaks super easily, just dynamic after the catch overall. 4.28 40 at the combine, showcased his speed. It was a big competition between him and his teammate Isaiah Bond. Oh, Isaiah Bond. Yeah, when you're saying you're going to run a flat 4.2 and under, and then you run a 4.48, not a great look. But Matthew Golden, though, he does have legit speed, deep end speed, 4.28 at the combine, and that speed shows up on tape. You can tell in his gameplay, in his game style, especially on those deep balls when he's tracking them, able to separate from defenders, able to give his quarterbacks a really solid target down the field. This is a guy that can make a ton of acrobatic, athletic catches. Kind of reminiscent of Garrett Wilson, at least that way. Garrett Wilson, at least at Ohio State, really kind of could go up, contort his body, catch the ball in a number of different ways, positions. This is a guy that's a really dynamic athlete overall. I think he's probably got one of the highest upsides of anybody in this wide receiver class. Honestly, probably him, or I think Luther Burden has the highest upside personally, but I think Matthew Golden is right there behind him. I also kind of wonder, he seems to be a first-round pick, first-round lock. Where he's going to end up, I think, is going to be interesting. I don't think he goes to 12 at Dallas, unless McMillan goes earlier. I feel like if the Saints maybe kind of take a chance on McMillan, maybe Dallas goes Matthew Golden. I think it's more likely Dallas kind of trades down then at that point. But Arizona is also a spot to look at here. Arizona really needs a wide receiver opposite of Marvin Harrison. Seattle also could use a wide out after kind of decimating their room. Lockett's gone. Obviously, DK Metcalf gone. So it's really just Jackson Smith and Jigba, Cooper Kupp right now. Could use a younger option too. And then the Chargers, I think, are a really great fit for Matthew Golden. What they want to do there, they need a wide receiver pretty badly. I think Los Angeles. I always think of them as San Diego still. But the Chargers, I think, are a team that really kind of fits Matthew Golden. His play style fits them. Then I think my last wide receiver I'm a Trey Harris guy. I really like Trey Harris. This is a kid that I think people kind of forget how dominant he was at the start of the 2024 season. 6'2", 205, decent size. Not going to blow you away with his speed, but he's just able to make some really close contested catches, strong hands, will fight through defenders to get back to the ball. I've seen him make some unbelievable grabs, and he's not going to separate from the defender. The defender's still going to be right on him, but Trey Harris, more often than not, is still able to come down with the football, and I think that's really impressive. in his first game ever at Ole Miss, he transferred in from Louisiana Tech. In his first game ever at Ole Miss, he caught 4 receiving touchdowns. I mean, it was against Mercer, but still set the Ole Miss single game record, 4 receiving touchdowns in his first game ever. I was there. That was pretty crazy. It looked really easy for him too. Like none of it looked hard. He made it look pretty effortless. And he finished this season with 1,030 receiving yards overall. But so you have that 1,030 total. Through the first 5 games of the season, Trey Harris had 804 receiving yards. This is the second most out of the college football playoff era. Well, actually the most out of the college football playoff era. So since 14-15. And then most since Brandon Cooks had 807 in 2013. So 804 yards through 5 games. Trey Harris was absolutely balling out. Got hurt during the LSU game, and that was a game that Ole Miss probably should have won. They did not. Got hurt and really just fell off after that. Tried to come back against Florida, re-aggravated his injury during the Florida game, and just then kind of ended on a poor note that 2024 last season. But this is a kid that I think if you look at the start of this past season, you look at what he did in 2023, he's a really, really exciting wide receiver. I also love him after the catch. This is a guy that will catch. This is a guy that will catch the ball and make the first defender miss after kind of making a move on him. Runs really hard, has the contact balance to break tackles, can shake press coverage with release. This guy, his time speed, not going to be great, but he runs well on tape. He's faster than I think his time is. Guy that's going to track the deep ball really well, and I think he's quick and fluid enough to kind of develop even more as a route runner. That's the one thing right now with him. His route tree is not super highly developed, pretty simplistic at Ole Miss in Lane Kiffin's system, but I think he's good enough to kind of develop that, make it a better part of his game overall. So we're going to take another break on the GSMC College Football Podcast. When we come back, we're still going to talk some draft. We're going to talk some of the rumors, predictions for some of the stuff that's just come out today. Draft days always kind of you get rumors flying everywhere, so we're going to go over some of that, discuss some of that. But we'll be back shortly on the GSMC College Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast. Just talked a little bit about wide receivers. Anthony asked about his top receivers. I do like a lot of those guys. I think Jack Bash, he's going to be really solid at the next level out of TCU. I think that's going to be a guy that is going to be, one of those day 2 picks that ends up producing really well. Jaden Higgins, I also like a lot. I had a couple other guys that I think they're just more of my personal favorites. But yeah, I mean, those guys are all pretty solid. I'm not huge on this class overall in terms of like elite talent, but I think there's a couple guys that could definitely be starters, at least 4 or 5. So, but I really like Jack Bech out of TCU, though. I think he's going to be a really solid wide receiver, probably like a wideout too for, I don't know. I think if he ends up in the right system, like what if he ends up with the Rams? I think that could be a really interesting fit with Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua. That would be something exciting, I think. But, so, it's still draft talk. I want to talk a little more. One of the things that I've been seeing today is Ashton Jeanty maybe going to Jacksonville. Obviously, Jaguars have a new GM, new head coach in Liam Cohn. Could they actually maybe go run a game? I don't know. I kind of doubt that. You know, they still have ETN. But it does sound like they might go this way. Diana Rossini did say that the Jags were hoping to keep the draft, quote, electric. That was the actual word that was used, was electric. Is Ashton Jeanty electric? I think he certainly is, but will that be a spot for him? I don't know, because it really sounds like John Spytek wants Ashton Jeanty if he's there at number 6 for the Raiders. Yeah, but I don't know if I really see Ashton Jeanty going to Jacksonville. The more I see the Jaguars, the more their picks are kind of all over the place. Mason Graham had been the guy for months, basically, at that number 5 spot that had been mocked, and now that's kind of all out the window right now. We'll see if that's just all a smokescreen. They really do need defensive tackle help, though, bad. What teams do you see trading up from the 20s to get around 13? I don't know who trade-up candidates are. Tight end-wise, I think Colson Loveland will probably be at 14. I see what you're saying, though, to go to 13 to get in front of Indy. I'm curious, too, because some teams have Colson Loveland as tight end 1 over Tyler Warren. I do not, personally. I think Tyler Warren's just a better prospect overall. I'm curious to see if Tyler Warren goes at like 7 to the Jets, because the Jets are kind of all over the place right now in terms of their projection. If Tyler Warren goes to like the Jets at 7, does Chicago maybe, or do the Saints maybe look at a tight end like Colson Loveland? I think that's possible. I'm looking at, I think Denver at 20, they might be trading. They could trade either way. Sean Payton always likes to use tight ends, and they don't have a super strong tight end. I think they signed Evan Ingram, but they could always use another tight end. I think they could try to trade back, though, too, right now, because they're in an interesting spot, because they're in front of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh at 21. If they think the Steelers are going to draft a quarterback, could they potentially trade back to let one of those teams, like the Browns, Giants, trade in to get in front of Pittsburgh to draft a quarterback, especially if Shedeur Sanders falls. That's the other thing that's been happening today. Yeah, the Ravens are a really solid option. Ravens, yeah, they kind of do their own thing. I could see them. I've actually seen Mark Andrews as maybe being on the trade block to get traded tonight. I kind of doubt that, but Eric DaCosta had some comments this offseason where it really put Mark Andrews' future in jeopardy. They also do have Isaiah Likely, though, in Baltimore, and I know they really like him a lot. They're probably going to have him kind of step in that role. Chargers do make a lot of sense. The Harbaugh connection. They could use a tight end, a playmaker at tight end. The Rams, I'm really kind of interested to see what they do. I think I'm not really sure what the Rams do at 26, honestly. I'm not the biggest Jackson Dart fan, but I will say I think the one place where he can be successful and be a really good starting quarterback in the NFL is if the Rams draft him at 26. I don't know. I I kind of am going back and forth with the Rams right now. I'm also curious to see what Carolina's going to do. So it really sounds like Carolina doesn't want to pick at 8. Will they try to, and they've been trying to trade back. I wonder if somebody's going to try to trade into that 8 spot, especially if they think New Orleans is going to go quarterback. I don't really think the Saints will. Also, Dan Graziano today said that the Giants prefer Jackson Dart over Shedeur Sanders, and as well as Tom McShay reported that apparently Shedeur Sanders, his meeting with Brian Dable did not go well. Brian Dable was reportedly frustrated with Sanders' lack of preparation on an installation package. I'm kind of curious. I don't know if I really believe that. Everything it sounds like is that the Giants have really liked Shedeur Sanders throughout this entire process. I don't think he's going to fall out of round 1. Obviously, that's been said a lot today. It'd be really surprising to me. I think the number of quarterbacks in the first round is probably going to be 3 today. I don't know, though. It's possible. Another thing that I thought was funny that I saw right before the show is, so Ashton Jeanty is favored to be picked at number 5, which is currently owned by the Jaguars, but he's also favored to be picked by the Chicago Bears. So could the Bears be trying to move up into, the top 5 pick to get Ashton Jeanty? Apparently, I also saw that the Jaguars have been trying to trade up to 2 or 3 to maybe get Travis Hunter. I guess they've been talking with Cleveland a little bit. I don't see Cleveland or the Giants trading out of that 2 or 3 spot. I think the potential to add a difference maker is just too big there. And I think after the top couple of prospects, the second tier of prospects, it's much murkier, much more up for debate. But I wonder what's going to happen there. I'm also curious to see, so Walter Nolan, Matt Miller called him a red-hot riser. A lot of mocks I've seen recently have been projecting him to go to the San Francisco 49ers at 11, but then other mocks I've seen, he's all the way out of the first round. I think that's going to be kind of interesting to see his range. There's character effort questions with Walter Nolan, but this is a guy that was the top prospect in his recruiting class. Obviously elite talent, really kind of put it all together for Ole Miss this past season, and teams have really been putting more of an emphasis on pass rushing defensive tackles in the past couple of years. You started to see teams pay a premium for that position. Milton Williams just got a bag this offseason because he can rush the passer as a defensive tackle. And then another guy I'm looking at just because of injury-wise is Josh Simmons. Where's he going to end up? I really like the fit. If he is at 31, I think Kansas City jumps on that right away. Josh Simmons is a kid that was probably going to be a top 10 pick before his ACL tear this season. Really talented offensive tackle. Kansas City obviously still has issues with that. They did sign Wanye Morris, but I don't know if that's going to be the full answer or solution to that problem. But I think Josh Simmons, he also could be a top 10 pick, or he could be a second-round pick. That's the fun thing with this year's draft class is we really don't know after the first few picks. I think it's really up in the air. I think this is going to be a year where individual team draft boards matter more so than anything else. We're probably going to see at least 3 or 4 picks tonight that most people are going to kind of scratch their heads, but that's probably just how that team's board shook out in terms of that kind of middle tier of prospects. I don't know. I'm excited, though. We'll see. I'm sure there's probably has been even more rumors that have come on since I've been on the air, but I haven't seen anything right now. I'm sure there's going to be some good ones when I come back. There's always a fun one or two. Draft day is always great, especially for misdirection kind of stuff. I think it makes it more fun. just overall, it's the strategy, the gamemanship. It's all a part of it. It's all a part of trying to win in the NFL. So right now we're going to take a short break. Then when we come back, guess what? We got more draft talk, but that's all right. We're going to talk a little bit about veterans, guys who I think could be traded tonight or throughout this weekend, and why. But we'll be back shortly on the GSMC College Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the Podcastt app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, and you know what day it is. It's draft day. We got some more draft talk. We're going to talk a little bit about some NFL vets that I think could be traded this weekend, tonight. I'm going to start off Jalen Ramsey, obviously big name. They've already agreed to, him and the Dolphins already agreed to mutually explore trade options. Chris Greer flat out came out and said it last week in his press conference. It makes sense. I can see why Miami would do it, get off of that contract. The only thing is Miami does not have a lot of cornerback depth besides Jalen Ramsey. So if Jalen Ramsey does get traded, Miami is definitely going to need to add to that secondary. The Rams are reportedly in talks of reacquiring Jalen Ramsey. It's a move that makes sense. The Rams do need secondary help. The one thing I think is kind of funny there is his beef with Davante Adams. What's going to happen there if they're teammates? I don't know. Historically, Jalen Ramsey and Davante Adams have not gotten along. I'll just leave it at that. But I think that's kind of interesting. If LA does end up reacquiring Jalen Ramsey, what's that locker room kind of going to look like? Could be funny. I think there's a couple other landing spots, though, that do make sense for him. Washington has really been kind of in that vet hunting, adding to try to become a budding contender after their NFC title run last season. Added Laramie Tunsil, added Deebo Samuel, added Marshawn Lattimore last year. Could this be a spot that makes sense? They still have a quarterback on a rookie year deal, and it could be a team that makes sense. They have a lot of cap space there. Atlanta, I think, is also a team that makes a ton of sense. Raheem Morris, new head coach, coordinator, with Jalen Ramsey at one point. They know each other well. I think that's a spot that could make sense too. He could play opposite A.J. Terrell. Maybe, but I don't know. Jalen Ramsey, I think, is probably going to end up being an LA Ram again. Trey Hendrickson, also a guy he could be gone very quickly. Requested a trade out of Cincinnati. Wants a new contract. Kind of unhappy with the progress that's made. He's kind of been taking a back seat to the offensive deals that Cincinnati's made, just in terms of re-signing Jamar Chase, re-signing T. Higgins, giving both of them $30+ million a year. Chase, $41. He's the highest paid non-quarterback in the league right now. Trey Hendrickson wants a new deal. Rightfully so. The dude has had 35 total sacks over the past 2 seasons, 17.5 in both of the past 2 years. And that's a guy that should deserve a new contract, right? But I don't think Cincinnati's going to be able to pay him. If he's still unhappy, I think they could try to look to trade him, especially if they take a D end at 17. do they try to flip Hendrickson for, a second-round pick, maybe another late middle-round pick? And could teams like Seattle, who they kind of need help on the edge right now, Arizona. I think Arizona is a team that really fits a lot. Just from a fit standpoint, they need help on the edge. He could fill a really big hole there for the Cardinals. It's a young team that's kind of building up. You can have a veteran presence there in Trey Hendrickson. I think that's a spot that kind of makes sense for him. I don't know. It really sounds like Cincinnati wants to hang on to him. I don't think that's going to be feasible for them financially, at least in the future. Whether they realize that now or in a year or two, that remains to be seen. But definitely another name to kind of watch for, keep an eye out on. Kayvon Thibodeau, I also think, is another name that could be on the move on the defensive side of the ball. The Giants have to deal with his fifth-year option this upcoming year, possibly give him a new deal. They already brought in Brian Burns from Carolina, gave him an extension. And then if Cleveland goes, Travis Hunter at 2, and then if the Giants go, Abdul Carter at 3, do they then look to try to move on from Kayvon Thibodeau, get a pick from him, draft somebody else? Then you have Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, and Kayvon Thibodeau. He could be kind of seen as luxury that could be got rid of. I think they could deem him expendable if they do take Carter at 3. That's going to be a name to kind of watch. Or they keep all 3, try to really build out that pass rush unit. I think that's also a possibility for the Giants for sure. George Pickens is a guy that's been in the news the past few days. Obviously, the Steelers kind of remade their room this past season, traded for DK Metcalf, gave him a new deal worth up to $130 million over 4 years. There is an out after 2027, after 2 years, $60 million. There is a potential out for that contract. They'd only have, it'd be like a dead cap of around 18 mil, maybe something like that. So nothing too expensive. But in name, in theory, it's a 4-year deal. With DK Metcalf on board, is George Pickens expendable in Pittsburgh? Could they look to move on from him? He's obviously going to need a new contract as well. Could Pittsburgh try to get a day 2 pick for George Pickens? And then George Pickens also unfollowed the Steelers on Instagram this week, yesterday, I believe, but unfollowed the official Pittsburgh Steelers Instagram account, kind of sparking the rumors, stoking the flames that maybe he could be on the move. If not, though, I think that's a hysterical wide receiver room with George Pickens and DK Metcalf. Those are 2 guys that will go to battle. I'll say that. Just 2 funny personalities there. Another guy I think is potentially that hasn't really been talked about recently as a trade candidate, but I think Jair Alexander could be a guy that could be on the move. Only has appeared in 16 games over the past 2 seasons. Availability and injury history has been a big issue with Jair Alexander. When he's on the field, he's great. He's an all-pro type candidate for the Packers at cornerback, but the issue is he's not on the field a whole lot, and he also has a $25 million cap hit for this upcoming season. Could the Packers try to move on from that cap hit and try to recoup something from Jair Alexander? The only issue here, again, kind of similar to Jalen Ramsey, is the Packers do not have a ton of cornerback depth, so if they move on from Jair Alexander, they're going to have to add to that position at some point over the weekend. If not in the first round, at least some point during the weekend, they're going to have to add depth. Miami, I think, might draft a cornerback at 13. That's very possible. I don't know if the Packers do. We'll see. But then another guy I think is kind of a sneaky pick could be Dallas Goedert. Obviously, Philadelphia Eagle. really successful tight end, probably a top 10 tight end in the league, but he's in the last year of his contract. He's going to need a new deal. Could Philly look to move on from Dallas Goedert, and in advance of giving him a contract extension? This is something that they do repeatedly, especially on the trenches in the line. They reload draft year after year to kind of replace these guys that are leaving. I could see it. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more it seems like an Eagles move to make. They would have to replace the tight end, but I think they could get a decent value for Dallas Goedert. I'm really looking at a team like, could Indianapolis look to acquire Dallas Goedert if they kind of lose out on one of the tight ends that they were looking at in the first round? Could that be a replacement for their room for a draft pick? I think it would make sense. Shane Steichen obviously coached Dallas Goedert in Philadelphia, really familiar with him, would be a good fit for that scheme, would be a massive upgrade for that room in general. I think that's a guy that he could definitely be on the move, as well as Anthony said, Mark Andrews, I think could be on the move as well. At least names that are going to be in conversations. GMs are going to talk about some of these guys, maybe not tonight, but at least throughout the weekend for sure. And we'll see if anybody does end up getting traded. We're probably going to see one or two. Could we see a Kirk Cousins trade? I kind of doubt that, but you never know. That's always the fun of draft day, of the draft weekend, of the spectacle that is the NFL draft. You gotta love it, right? We're going to take another short break on the show. When we come back, we're going to talk about college guys now. I promise. We're going to talk about college guys, but we're going to talk about college guys that I think could be 2026 first rounders. So we'll be back shortly on the GSMC College Football Podcast. Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast. Just talked a little bit about some NFL vets that could potentially be traded tonight or over the weekend on draft weekend for the NFL. Now I want to talk about some guys that are still in college that I think could be first rounders next year. My first guy on the list, first name I thought of, I will be shocked if this kid is not a first round pick next year, is got to be Caleb Downs. Has been the most valuable safety in college football over the past 2 seasons, according to Pro Football Focus's wins above average metric. That's kind of a catch-all metric. Had 91.7 grade overall in that span. Second among all FBS safeties. Also third in terms of coverage across all FBS safeties. Fantastic run defender as well. Had 35 run defense stops, 88.5 run defense grade as well. This is a kid that can do everything. He can play down in the box. He can play out in center field. He can play kind of roving. He can play slot corner. He can return punts. Just a dynamic athlete overall. able to do so many different things. Anchor of this Ohio State defense. Huge pickup for them after he had a great true freshman season at Alabama. Really was one of the catalysts for that national title run for Ohio State last season. This is a kid that I will be shocked, absolutely shocked, if Caleb Jones is not a first-round pick next year. I think he's a top 5, top 10 talent. I think this is a guy that's going to be a Pro Bowler, perennially all-pro type of guy. Just a freak athlete. And I think just the ability to do so many different things at such a high level makes him such a unique player, unique prospect. This is a guy that I think he probably would have been a top 5 pick if he was in this year's class. Just in terms of his ability, what he can do, how he can impact games. I love Caleb Downs. I think he's a guy that, again, if he's not a first rounder next year, I don't know, man. I mean, I shouldn't be talking anything then. That's if he's not, it's gonna be insane. But Caleb Downs, I'll be shocked if he's not a top 5 guy. Another guy though, I think I'm really high on. It's a projection pick. I really like Drew Aller from Penn State. Gonna be his 3rd year as a starter this season. Had a pretty strong 2024 performance just across the board. Really improved upon most of his numbers from 2023. But still kind of has those same question marks right now. Can he win games that matter? Can he win big games? This season alone, had a chance on 4th and goal to, bring the Ohio State game within reach. Had a chance to beat Oregon in the final few minutes of that game. Could not. Had a chance to beat Notre Dame in the national semifinal in the last 2 minutes of that game. Threw an interception. Penn State lost. That's going to be, again, this is the question mark with Drew Aller. Can he win the big games? Can he be clutch? Can he beat those elite opponents at the college football level? But besides that, this is a guy that has all the tools, all the traits to be a really successful starting quarterback in the NFL. This is a really high-end projection, but I just think in terms of body type, in terms of style of play, probably not on the same level, but very similar to Josh Allen. 6'5", 235, really basically the same kind of frame. Not as much of a strong runner as Josh Allen is, but this is a guy that still can use his legs, a powerful runner at the quarterback position, and also just a cannon of an arm. He's got the traits that NFL scouts will drool over, which is also what I think will help his projection. Just the size, the arm strength, the leadership skills, intangibles, I think are all bonuses and really could be beneficial to Drew Aller's case as a 2026 first rounder, where there's going to be 2 or 3 quarterbacks. There normally is. And I think Drew Aller has a really solid chance to be one of those few starting quarterbacks in the first round next year. I honestly think he could have been this year just because of the strength of the quarterback class, but that's a different conversation. Another guy, though, I think Caden Proctor. I think he's probably going to be the first lineman off the board. This guy, it's going to be his 3rd year as starting left tackle. Went to Alabama, and then he had that weird, after Saban retired, he was in the portal for a couple months, went back to Iowa, and then transferred back to Alabama. So this will be his 3rd year starting at Alabama. Has been the starter there the entire year. The entire time, had some growing pains as a true freshman, obviously, but really kind of stepped into the role last year. Still developing, though, but some of his best performances were against elite defensive lines. In 3 games against South Carolina and Georgia, he had a 90.4 pass blocking grade and also only allowed 1 pressure on 96 pass blocking snaps. I think that really kind of showcases his high-end potential because, Georgia has Jalen Walker, Michael Williams, two guys that are going to be first-round picks on the edge. South Carolina, Kyle Kennard this past season, really great player for them. Also, Dylan Stewart, absolute freak. Again, those guys are NFL talents. So the fact that Caden Proctor kind of had his best games against players of that caliber, I think shows his high-end projection, what he can be. He can be an elite offensive tackle, and people really like that. NFL scouts love that. Also, 6'7", 369. 369 pounds. It's just pretty crazy. But he's also really, really athletic, especially for how big he is. Moves really well, light on his feet. It's kind of surprising, honestly, how athletic he is, at how big he is. Pretty freakish. But Caden Proctor, I think, could be another guy that's going to be a first-rounder just because of that production at the SEC level, the frame, the high-end potential, I think all kind of help his case as a first-rounder, as a first-round prospect. Another guy, one of my favorite guys in college football, Anthony Hill Jr., Texas linebacker, absolute stud. I love this guy. 113 total tackles, 59 solo tackles that season, 8 sacks, 1 interception, 4 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery too. Not bad for a day's work there. Wow. Just those stats are, the well-roundedness of those stats are crazy to me. This is a guy that is always around the ball. Legitimate superstar on defense, unquestioned leader for Texas, and he's just constantly around the football, in run defense, in pass rushing, in coverage. It doesn't matter. The guy's always there, and he's good at everything. Since 2023, he's had 32 coverage stops, which tied for the most among FBS linebackers in that time span. Has 10 sacks and 5 forced fumbles in that time span. And since 2023, both of those numbers are also tied for the most among Power 4 linebackers. So I was not Group of 5, but still all Power 4 conferences. He's ahead in sacks. He's ahead in forced fumbles. He's also not bad at coverage, and he can play run defense. I think that's just crazy. And then another stat I loved was he's had 127 plays where he's made first contact on the ball carrier. 127 times he has been the first guy to the ball. That's the most of any returning Power 4 linebacker. This guy's awesome. I really love watching him. I'm excited to see what he can do at Texas again this season. And I think he's pretty much going to be a lock for the first round next year, especially if he comes anywhere even close to these numbers. I don't even think he has to touch the numbers from last season. He's still going to be a first-round pick. That's how good Anthony Hill Jr. is. A guy that's really awesome for Texas. I can't wait to see him this season. But then my last guy, I think, wide receiver is a really interesting position for the 2026 class. There is really nobody that's kind of in the leader position right now. Evan Stewart might be one guy. He's going to be at Oregon this season. Obviously, played at Texas A&M before. Could potentially be the number 1 wideout in this class. Former 5-star. Got a lot of traits. But I'm looking at another guy. I really like Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. Really big breakout season last year. Had 1,100 receiving yards, redshirt sophomore. Only returning wide receiver who had more receiving yards was Jeremiah Smith. And we all know the capabilities of Jeremiah Smith. But then I think I like this too. In Arizona State's last 6 games of the season, Tyson led the nation with 729 receiving yards during that time span, and he had 4 yards per route run, second among all Power 4 receivers during that time. I think if he can carry that momentum from the last 6 games of the season into this upcoming season and keep producing, he could definitely be a first-round pick. And he's going to be the focal point of the Arizona State offense. Cam Scatterbo's gone. They're returning Sam Levitt. This is going to be a more passing team. And I think Jordan Tyson, if he has another really productive year, he could potentially be a first-round wide receiver, could potentially jump to the top of that wide receiver board for next season. But that's going to be definitely an interesting position to watch for this upcoming year. What wide receivers kind of rise to the top, which ones fall, we will see. That's going to be all for our show today. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC College Football Podcast. Please remember to subscribe, like, follow, and if you want even more of the sports contents, sports update that you love, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok for more sports overall. You know, everybody likes sports. So, thank you so much, and have a great day.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.